If you want to mute yourself, there's a mute. Oh, you just turn it off or just pop back in. So don't go into the bathroom.
Every distillery, head distillery, every distillery.
Alright folks, we'll be starting in just a second. We're just getting everyone else sat down in the room. While you're waiting, let us know in the chat where you're coming from, because obviously we're all here at one big room. You're at basically a tasting event of your own, so just have a little chat in the room to yourself. There's also a few little surprises later on, which we'll let you know
next year.
later on. So hopefully
there's 40 tables in the room. There's 40 people from 40 distilleries. So next year 4 distilleries will do it. So we've got the one opportunity to do the tasting for everyone, as opposed to next year there'll be 4 different brands do it. So it's just a bit of a tradition that we've started. So
How did you swing that?
I reached out to David. I was like, David, look, this is all your malt. I was like, do you mind if I brought down a bottle and throw it at the tables and let people, whatever, we're toasting at the end? He's like, yeah, it's fine. But then he rang me on the way down. He's like, we want you to do a tasting. I was like, fuck. Genuinely such a room to be doing a tasting in, like.
Where is the Madeira? Is that near the RDS?
It's not far.
Yeah,
it's not far. Should be flashed, like. It'll be flashed, yeah.
Andy, was she on the roof? No, she was sitting on a bus.
Dinner was powerful too.
Alright folks, quiet now. They want to clap to the microphone. So, we should have a quite nice little tasting today. It is warm, it is humid, it is awful outside, but it's lovely inside because we've got whiskey. We've got the guys here, we've got Will, and oh my god, it's blanking my mind. Terry, oh my god. I was like, don't forget Will's name because he just introduced himself to me. I forgot Terry's name. We've got Terry and Will here from Hinch. There's stuff here on the table there in front of you about tastings and things you can do at the distillery. There may or may not be whiskey for sale at the end of the tasting, and don't worry for the folks online, there will be a discount code as well for yourselves, but that comes later. Right now, we're going to start off and have a chat about the whiskey we're going to taste, talk about Hinch, talk about what their plans are, what their kind of mission and goal is, and then taste some good whiskey. We're going to taste the 3. We're going to have about a 10-15 minute break to go to the bathroom, get yourself a bit of water, get yourself refreshed, and then come back and taste the last 3 whiskies. Does that sound good? Yeah. We have got people online watching, so if there are questions, lash them out. The guys repeat them. The folks online, if you have any questions, throw them into the chat. The guys here on the team, we will ask Terry, we will ask Will. Remember your name this time. Yeah. And we will make sure you are involved in tasting. But now, enough out of me. On to the guys. Hey. So
Lovely stuff, thank you, Matt. And thanks very much to everybody from Irish Whiskey Society for having us down. So yes, as Matt was saying, my name's Terry. I'm the brand ambassador for Hinch Distillery. This is Will, our senior distiller and distillery manager. Our head distiller, sorry, I'm demoting you already. So yes, if you aren't familiar with Hinch Distillery as a brand, as a distillery, we're up in the north, we're in County Down, and we started distilling in November 2020. So the story of Hinch begins with another man called Terry. Same first name, different surname, really different bank account, I can assure you. So Dr. Terry Cross, OBE, started his life in packaging. He had a small company set out in his ma's shed originally. He then moved off and upgraded to a factory setting in West Belfast. Long story short, that he ended up doing all of the packaging for McDonald's, KFC and Burger King throughout Europe. John Hume, during the peace process talks, ended up getting him a contract through America, and things took off from there. He then sold that company in the late 90s for a very pretty penny. And as part of the buyout clause, he was not allowed to enter the world of packaging for 20 odd years. So he had all this money, didn't know what to do with it. So he went off to the south of France and he bought a chateau in Bordeaux, as we all will do one day eventually. So he purchased Chateau de la Ligne, actually on St. Patrick's Day 2000, and he started to refurbish the building, started to replant the vineyards and produce wine. Done that for about 10 years or so, and then he brought himself back to Northern Ireland and purchased Kilkenny Estate. So that's the ground that our distillery is built on. It is built from about 1850. and it was originally used as the holding house for the 4th Marquess of Downshire while he was waiting for Hillsborough Castle to finish construction. So it was just a wee holiday home. So that building itself then it moved into private ownership. It was a rectory for St Andrew's Church, which is just up the road from our distillery. And the previous owners of that building were the F.G. Wilson family, who built the Caterpillar diggers, and then Terry took it on. So he had a couple of conversations with different people. John Teeling was one of them, and he knew that he wanted to be part of the Irish whiskey industry. John Teeling advised him of different ways to go about it, and the plan was to then build a distillery. So our distillery, the original plan was to put Hinch, or the idea of Hinch, it was meant to be up near Glenarm direction. If you know your northern geography, it's very close to another distillery. It starts with B, it rhymes with Shush Mills. We don't really talk about it that much. But yeah, so basically it was going to be right next to another multi-million-pound distillery. So the council and the good people of Bushmills told Terry, we really don't need another multi-million-pound whiskey factory on the North Antrim coast. Could you kindly build it elsewhere? And Terry very obligingly said, no problem at all. We'll just do it in my garden. So he levelled off his stables and his tennis courts, and he put a £15 million whiskey factory in his backyard. It is the most beautiful smoking area you have ever seen. So basically we started construction in 2016. A wee thing called COVID happened, you might remember. So that kind of delayed the opening a bit. We began distilling in November 2020, and then we opened our doors to the public in June of 2021. So I originally started in the company as a tour guide, worked my way to senior tour guide, and then became brand ambassador about a year after that. So I've been going to Hinch for money. So it's been good. So yes, so as I say, we're about 4.5 years into our distilling journey so far. We're at the really exciting point where we are now bringing our own liquid into the market. We have blended since we opened, as well as the £15 million investment in the building itself. We put another 5 million, I say we, it was Terry, we put another 5 million towards source stock. So we purchased liquid from Great Northern Distillery and from Bushmills as well, from Shush Mills, sorry. And yeah, so that was about getting our brand identity out there, poking at different flavour profiles that we're looking to explore. And they've been fantastic blends. Part of my job for the first 3 years was fighting the snobbery of single malt and kind of singing the praises of blended Irish whiskey. And now that we have our single malt out, I sing a very different tune. But no, there's brilliant blends out there as well. So as I said, this evening is kind of showing you a wee bit about what we've done, what we're currently doing, and a smaller look at what we're doing in-house with some of our Warehouse 3 collection. So, that is the rough history of Hinch in a nutshell. There is a written exam on the way out, folks, so I do hope you were listening. I need facts, dates, figures. So if you're happy enough to crack on, we can jump into our first whiskey. Do you want to add anything for now? I was going to say, yeah. So, first whiskey of the evening. This is a whiskey that Will has christened our Swiss Army knife, and it perfectly describes it. So this is our 5-year-old double wood. By double wood, we mean 2 barrels. It's done for 4 years in an ex-bourbon, and for 1 year in a virgin oak. So they're both American oak. Again, if you give it a wee kind of swirl, it's sitting at 43%, so it's slightly overproofed. It is chill filtered, but it's a nice wee entry level whiskey. It just kind of warms your palate up. On the nose, to me, this is a very typical Irish profile. You get that wee bit of almond and marzipan, quite nutty and earthy. And on the palate, a wee bit of light black pepper. So for our first dram, sláinte.
Sláinte.
So as I say, this is a blended whiskey. We're very upfront with our blends from day one. Whenever I'd started the tours, we would bring out this, and people would go, "You've only been open for 18 months. How do you have a 5-year-old whiskey?" And I had explained about blending at the start of the tour and said, "Well, if you were listening." But yeah, so we had source liquid. We got stuff from Great Northern. We got stuff from Bushmills. It's about 80% grain, 20% malt. And then, as I say, the finish in the virgin oak. I normally bring a stave with me. I'm assuming most of you have seen a barrel at some point or another. It's my learning stick, and I'm raging I don't have my prop. But these are familiar with the Angel's Share, bit of evaporation that happens. The reason I bring a stave with me to most tastings, except this, is because if you look at the side panel of a stave, you can see the kind of white line bleeding into the wood, and that's how much the alcohol has penetrated the wood. So when you use an ex-bourbon barrel, first 4 years of this bourbon, it's a corn-based liquid, so it's going to be very sweet. You get loads of vanilla, toffee, caramel, you get a real popcorn flavour going on. a barrel is a very clever sponge, and it holds on to about 3% of the previous liquid held in that wood. So there's about 6 litres of wet bourbon in the barrel whenever we buy it from the States. Whenever we use a virgin oak, it's like a clean sponge. There's nothing going on in there bar the natural flavours of the wood. So the liquid, it'll have all of those sweet notes, not all of them, but it'll have the bulk of that harsher sugariness pulled out, and then the more savoury profiles bleed into it. So you get that almond, the wood, the leather, wee bits of kind of like dark cocoa and some kind of chocolate notes coming through. Part of my job as well, other than tastings, is going around off and on trade. So this, I used to, before Hinch, I was a tour guide in Crumlin Road Jail, where there's another distillery now, and before that, I was chatting to a few of the guys before. I used to live in New Zealand, and I managed an Irish bar. Don't say wow, it's very easy to get a visa, it's grand. If you say you're Irish, they'll let you in anywhere, it's very manageable. But yeah, so whenever I was in the Irish bar, the type of whiskies we were taking in, it was that Swiss Army knife that Will chatted about. You want something that is an all-rounder, so I will drink this neat. We'll have it in a tall drink during the summer with a wee bit of ginger ale. Some people like it with soda water. I'll use it for Irish coffee or for hot whiskies. You can play about with it for an old-fashioned or a Tom Collins. It does a wee bit of everything. It's a fairly affordable bottle as well, so you're not breaking the bank, and it's not a sacrilege to play about and mix with it. And if you do make something wrong, you can neck it or kind of get rid of it and try again. So we'll say it's not the end of the world. And if you do make something wrong, try 3 of them and they will be delicious. So, go on ahead.
Question, why 43% and not 46%?
We obviously just being
Repeat for that.
So, why 43 and not 46?
So the objective of the 43 was because it's a global product, and whenever we built the distillery, part of that ethos was accessibility, and that comes down to, unfortunately, duty and VAT. Both the south of Ireland and the north of Ireland, 2 most expensive markets in the world for customs duty. So to sum it up, that 5-year-old retails at £34, 17 of that goes to the government, and that is down to duty.
That lovely wee red sticker on the back. That's what you're paying 17 quid for.
Well, the VAT as well, but it's...
It is, and it's gorgeous.
So the 43% is for, it's more the not mass consumption, but it's a global product, and it's our ultimately our entry level products. We have a range of cask strength, which we're all consumers and we all love cask strengths, but we're trying to entice more people into the category. And as you'll figure out on Dram 3, with a 61.6% Dram for you, that puts a lot of people off. Even the 46 can be relatively big as customer facing, doing tours and stuff. 46 is still too much for some people, believe it or not. So the 43 was just a nice balance, not being 40, not too thin, and again just the 46 being conscious of people who were trying to entice into the category.
It's worth mentioning as well. So the 43 mark also makes it usable for cold chill filter. So for colour consistency, for me, whenever I go into a shop in Germany or a shop in Dublin, cold chill filter, you basically, from the distillers, we're a very small team, we'd have lunch together, so any weird questions I don't understand, Will and the guys will answer. Cold chill filter, my interpretation of it is you blast it through a thin copper pipe, chilled to less than 5 degrees Celsius.
It's just through a mesh filter to below 5, and it strips out oils, so it just stops haze basically in your product. This
Flocculation.
Flocculation.
See, I was listening. Go flock yourself.
Terry had said this is chill filtered. This now actually isn't. So whenever we started it, sorry.
Fuck, are you making a mug out of me?
No. He's right. Whenever we started the brand, this liquid was a lot younger than what it actually is now, and there wasn't as much colour and stuff in there. So for consistency across markets, there was caramel colouring added, and it was chill filtered. Today it is not. So there's one product left in our range that has colouring, and we hope by 12-14 months time that will be completely removed, and that's something that we set out to do. I said it was purely about consistency. There's nothing worse than your brand sitting on shelf and having everything look different colours. Consumers notice it. People buy with their eyes, and if you're purchasing an inconsistent product, it just doesn't look good. But said it is something we have eradicated from the brand over the last number of years, and said we've one product left to remove the colouring out of, and then that's a tick box, thankfully. Sorry,
we're all still learning. It's fine. That's good to know. But yeah, 5-year-old folks, any thoughts? There's no wrong answers. Yeah.
So is it, yeah, it's what I describe internally. I don't know if the Swiss Army knife's the right term to be using outside
I
the
like
distillery,
it.
but that's exactly what it is. First, it's just a really good bottle to have in the house. Again, people that don't like whiskey, this is probably the first dram that I showed them. I've been drinking whiskey for 20 years. It's still a really, really good whiskey. But again, long drinks, cocktails.
Sorry, did you say you've been drinking whiskey for 20 years?
No.
Oh, I was like, Will's 31, so that there's something wrong there.
For man is very different. If you've been drinking whiskey for 20 years, it's still a really good dram to have. I said, yeah, it's just it's a really good whiskey to have in the house, and that's what it was ultimately designed to do. Just be that versatile all-rounder.
Breakfast whiskey.
Breakfast
the
whiskey.
industry term. Lovely.
6 o'clock in the morning.
If you're in New Zealand
Yeah.
time, if you're doing a cross-continent tasting, lovely stuff. So again, folks, you are welcome to finish them in order. I generally, if you can, keep a wee nip to compare them as you go back and forward. But I've said it too late now, so if it's gone, it's gone. The top-ups may happen.
I unfortunately have to drive back home today because I've got important stuff to do. Terry's allowed to travel.
I unfortunately don't, so I'm double dramming.
So if anyone needs a dram, I'm not drinking them. So first person to put up their hand can have them. There we go. So
No, no.
jump.
Thank you very much.
No.
Never mind. An extra drum to hold on to for later.
It's just a wee nursing dram. Sharing is
There is
caring.
plenty. I said I'm not drinking, so mine can be shared out if you want.
Hang on a second. You make it, but is it this evening you're not drinking it? Or you
This evening.
just this evening.
Just this evening. I am partial to a William. measure.
Yeah. Will's Glencairn fills are legendary in the distillery. Yeah. So
Responsibly.
responsible, 2 hands. Yeah. So if we're happy enough to that's your lift. If we're happy enough to move on to the second dram, then, folks. So this has been released for about 2 years now.
Yeah, just coming up in 2 years this Christmas.
So this is our 15-year-old sherry cask finish. It's the first whiskey that we released in a tube. It's worth mentioning as well, it's the first tube in Northern Ireland to have a cardboard puck, so it's completely recyclable. Some people say that this is not recyclable, but I keep these and use them as an ashtray, so it's all about interpretation. But yes, so this is a 15-year-old sherry cask finish. So this is done, again, same blend ratio. You're talking 80% grain, 20% malt. The malt is older,
Yeah,
am I right?
so-
The malt's about 15?
Yeah, there's a 22-year-old single malt in this, and a 15 and a 17-year-old grain. The malt is from the north coast, so Shish Mills, and the grain is all Cooley. So again, everything has been aged in ex-bourbon casks, and then for a minimum of 2 years in first fill Oloroso.
And what's the breakdown of that 22, 17, 15?
So there's 20% malt, and then the other two, it's about between the whole grain component is about 60-40 from 17 to 15. So we bought a huge amount of inventory back in the day. So to this day we still have loads of it. But we're sort of just going through a transition out of sourced whiskies into all of our own. Yeah, 2 years.
It's worth mentioning. So it's a married finish, if I remember correctly. So the liquids are put together before they go to the Oloroso.
So we actually vatted everything from bourbon and then blended it and then put it into the sherry barrels.
First fill bourbon or
It was a mixture of 50, about 50% first fill and then 50% refill second. So most of it was second fill.
It's a big jump from a 5 to a 15, right?
So there's other stuff in the range. So as I say, this is kind of what we selected for this particular tasting. So we did have a 10-year-old sherry finish. It was 43. It may have been chill filtered. It was originally.
Early.
So this is then taking its place. So as I said, there's a 12-year-old Amarone that we have as well. There's who gasped at Amarone? We have an Italian fan at the back. Lovely. Your online discount works. Don't be worrying, it's there. So your 15-year-old sherry cask finish. So sherry casks We've all probably tasted a Redbreast or a Blackbush at some stage. My history spiel on it. And the reason that sherry casks are so popular, it was a lovely accident of timing with the invasion of the Spanish Armada and then whiskey taxation coming into play in around the 1660s. So the Spanish Armada came in, went up the west coast of Ireland, so into Galway, further into Donegal, up into Scotland. After about 100 years or so, the Spanish left behind three things, and it was sherry barrels from Spain, port from Portugal, and pregnant women from Derry. However, two of those things were useful. The sherry casks, and I'm not a fan of port. The barrels in the surplus that were there, whiskey taxation, 1661, we know the bar around here, that was the year of the first ever whiskey tax, and then the grain tax came in 1725, and it really drove poaching distillation, but it also drove whiskey smuggling. So distillers, monks, smugglers, and they started to transport their liquid in whatever vats were available. And on the island of Ireland, and in the kind of like around Speyside direction, the islands of Scotland, there were loads of sherry barrels about. So the liquid was put into these casks. If you were moving through a border patrol that had a very obvious whiskey on the side of it, you would get a heavy tax. If you put that same liquid in a barrel of sherry or brandy or port or vinegar or cider, you were having a much cheaper day. Over time then, 6 months to a year, the flavours of the previous liquid began to bleed into it. So we started picking up flavour notes that just weren't in the Irish palate at that stage. You were getting bits of cardamom and cinnamon, all these spices from the Middle East coming through, and beautiful tart fortified Portuguese wines. So it was a whole different flavour and colour complexity. So that's why the use of sherry barrels has stayed. It's why experimenting with other barrels like mezcal nowadays is still being played about with. But the original reason, always remember, it was tax evasion. We love, if we can dodge a bit of tax, we will. Back to the red sticker. But yeah, as I say, it was all about kind of pulling about with flavours. So the prominence of sherry barrels from Ireland, and particularly in Speyside in Scotland, has never really gone away. To me, sherry cask finishes, they're always that real Christmassy hit. So if you take your second one up to your nose here, so it's generally, to me, it's a very wintry type of whiskey. I like straight away, so I get very Christmas morning hits of like cinnamon, nutmeg, mulled wine, a fight with my dad. I did a tasting once, and I'd said about a fight with my dad, and there was a wee woman at the back of the room, and she went, macerated fruit, and I went, aye, that's what he called me. But this is being edited, it's not live, yes, that's all right. Yeah. Absolutely. Hello, Dad. So yes, 46% non-chill filter. It's a lovely kind of. It's that type of flavour profile that you'd expect of a much higher Redbreast or Blackbush, but it retails at about 65 sterling. We'll very often price it at 55 for shows and tastings and stuff. So for a 15-year-old.
What's the story with the artwork?
Thank you. So.
Smuggling? No.
Smuggling, possibly. So the elk you can see on the tube here, for the folks at home, and then if you just want to pass it around, you can. So the elk it's part of our like brand identity. It's on the neck label of every single bottle that goes out. It's the underpin of Hinch. The elk it's just generally in Northern Europe, but particularly in Ulster. In the Ulster Museum, there's a skeleton of an elk. When the distillery was being built, there was a skeleton of one pulled out of Loch Ness. So there's always a kind of link between elks and Ulster. Whenever people in the whiskey world see a great antlered beast, they go, oh, it's a stag or it's a deer, and we again have to explain, no, it's an elk, it's slightly different. The whole kind of point of it is it's about something that's great in stature but perfectly balanced, and that is what kind of Hinch sees itself as. You'll see on the tube as well, he's partly done in modern dress, so it's about the idea of an animal that was extinct but is now being pulled into life again into the 21st century. Again, it's trying to show what we're doing at Hinch. It's looking back at the history of Irish whiskey, but we are very aware that we're a young company. We're aware of what's come before, but trying to do things slightly differently in terms of our pricing, the age of our liquid, We have a very young team, so it's about the kind of dual identity, which we love in the north. But it's about looking back, but looking forward at the same time. So as I say, the elk, it's part of our kind of core identity. But as I say, it's about being big, well balanced, and not afraid to rough it up a wee bit. It's it in a nutshell. Marketing.
It's expensive, but I'd want to try that in a hot toddy at Christmas time. That kind of.
My auntie done that. I got her a bottle of it. She was like, I've got into my whiskey, and I sent her a bottle of the 15-year-old, and she sent me it in front of the kettle. And I was like, you're getting the Jack Daniels next year, Kate. But yeah, so it can't, now, to be fair, there's a cocktail bar in Belfast called, not Angel, what's the one upstairs from Sweet Afton? The Perch. And one of the guys used our 10-year-old in a brandy flip. And it was beautiful. It had a whole egg in it, wee dash of bitters and kind of cherry syrup. And when I'd give him bottles, I'd give him samples of the small batch and the 5, and he had a bottle of the 10-year-old at home, and he was like, I've played about with it, and I think this is class. Again, for anything above 5 years, in my kind of like naive days at the start, it was like, if it probably shouldn't be in a cocktail if it's 10 years old, but it's absolutely delicious, and you can stick it on your premium cocktail list and charge. Well, it's Dublin. I was going to say €15, but that's like a pint down here. But yeah, you can hit a wee bit higher for it if you want. But yeah, hot toddy, the spice element. So you probably wouldn't need the cloves and your lemon or get the brown sugar hit because the sweet element. So yeah, it could be done.
It's a really good cigar whiskey as well, actually, because of the woodiness comes through in it. Like there's a couple of tastings that we've done down in Dublin actually with the 15-year-old, and that seems to be the one that people are drawn to whenever they are smoking a cigar.
Any questions? Oh, that does not nice.
I see that it's batch 1. Is there going to be various batches then moving forward?
So asked about if it's batch 1, if there's going to be other batches going forward.
Yeah, there definitely is. So again, it's just said we do have a huge inventory of stock. So 15-year-old now, it could be 17, it could be an 18-year-old that we bring it out as, but it'll be the same concept. It'll be limited to approximately 2,000 bottles. But again, ABV will, again, depending on whether we think it's better at a higher ABV or if it's better at 43, that'll ultimately determine. That's the beauty about outside of our core range. There's so much flexibility in what we can do, and we're never tied to any release that we're planning. It's going to be 46 or it's going to be 43. These are all tasting panel whiskies. So again, they go through a ream of people in the distillery from accounts right through to tours, brand ambassadors, and we all decide then what we think is the best approach for that whiskey at that time.
It's a great evening. You get sent home with a couple of minis and everybody meets on a Zoom at like 7 o'clock. And it's lovely research. Any other wee questions on the 15? It is research.
Any preference between the 5 and the 15? Is anyone? 15?
I might make a risky guess and say it'll be the 15.
Again, it's one that, again, as whiskey drinkers, that's what we would expect. But there is, whenever we let people try this at Balmoral show or NI Love Your Food show, people that maybe aren't whiskey drinkers, they'll deviate towards the 5. So they will. So that's why I always ask that whenever we have those two side by side.
And then again, you'll see people's palate grow because we've had like locals have come into the distillery. It's kind of it's their local now. It's their regular spot, and having like ones that have said like, oh, I done the 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, and I loved the small batch, and they're now you can see them getting into peated whiskey, and like their palates growing as we are as well. Yeah.
And that's why we do the 43% thing, because it does draw people in. Like you know yourself, not everyone in this room started off drinking cask strength whiskies. It's something you work towards, but it's hard to sort of revert back to lower ABV whiskies when you have been drinking something at 55, 58 ABV, and we see the same with newcomers into whiskey as well.
Once you've had cream, it's hard to go back to milk. Sure.
Any takers for a 15-year-old dram?
Hands up.
Well, I'll go here. So that was the takers. Well, it's yours now. Someone else can have the next one.
Gotta get in there quicker.
Just the whole time.
Propping up.
You got hands up who likes it.
Do you want to lead on the Madeira?
Yeah.
Lovely.
Is everyone ready to move on to Dram 3? Yeah. Dram 3, this is what how do we...
So, folks, I heard a lovely expression once at a whiskey tasting. If you say what you already know, you're just repeating the same stuff. If you listen, you might learn something. That's what I say in the first half. In the second half, I'll just tell you to fuck up. So, over to Will.
So, Dram number 3, this is one of the distillery exclusives. So this is, you can only purchase from our retail shop. This is one of the first whiskies that we ever distilled. This is actually batch 1 of Peated that we first ever distilled at the distillery. So this was something, Warehouse 3 as a concept, we decided on very, very late in December that our whiskey, knowing that it was coming up to 4.5, 5 years old, we were like, let's start releasing some of our own whiskey. Quite quietly, didn't want to do any major launch at the time. So before we released any of our core whiskies with our own distillate in it, we just started releasing single casks through the visitor centre, which we knew there would be a small amount of interest in. So we brought out 3 drams. Again, because of the inventory that we have had, we had a 22-year-old priced at 90 quid, 22-year-old Madeira, and then right down to 3-year-old single malt distilled by Hinch, retailing at 40 quid for single cask. From that, again, this was really just the birth of what we'd set out to do 5 years ago. Accessibility was a huge part of what we wanted to achieve. Most of the people that work in the distillery are consumers, first and foremost. We're just very passionate and fortunate to have jobs that we all get paid to do within the distillery. So this was really about us bringing whiskies to people that are not normally afraid to open. So they'll go out and buy it, they'll keep it, they'll hold on to it. That is something that we wanted to change the narrative on, because that's what ultimately drives the price of whiskey up. And as a consumer, it's something that I hate. So again, price range, Warehouse 3, it was about people that want to buy a 22-year-old but are afraid of a 200, 300, 400 pound price tag. We bought that whiskey at a really, really fair price 6 years ago, and we just wanted to share that with people. To date, footfall in the distillery has increased 40%, which we did not expect. And retail sales have increased by 210% in 5 months. And it's interesting because, and quite insightful, that it hasn't impacted any of the products that we were previously selling. So all of our core range, it's a completely new customer base coming to the distillery just to get access to this. And there is some that have maybe moved from our core range into this. And again, that's just the evolution. Again, the 43% has enticed, and now they're willing to expand into single casks, etc. And it's ultimately down to price point. They're not scary figures to be able to purchase. When we released it, day 1, so we released it on a Friday, Saturday morning, 8:30, we had a guy from Skibbereen up to buy 27 bottles. That's a long drive. And considering he was
25 when he got home.
considering he was sitting there at 8:30, like they had left at 1 a.m. To come up and left those bottles because everyone thought they were going to Cork. Not at short notice, I don't think.
And not getting home with 27 bottles.
So yeah, this is one of our peated whiskies. I call this our gateway peated. So it's not very heavy in terms of phenols. It's 55 ppm malt, but again with the triple distilled, this is sort of sitting at about 15 ppm in spirit.
But it's like 61% ABV. It should be high.
But it should be, and it doesn't drink like a 61.6% ABV either. So has everyone tried this yet, or are we waiting for me to move on? So I would recommend to try it now, and then try it with some water. But again, I don't think this is a really, really heavily peated whiskey. There's a lot of people, again, new to peated, will say, oh, there's a lot going on in there.
Say, but Will brushes his teeth with Lefroy. So it's, everybody's familiar with the term ppm. Is anybody not aware of it?
Where is the malt from? Is it Irish or Scottish?
So this batch in particular, so year 1, all of our barley was brought in from Scotland. So from 2021 onwards, the end of 2021, all of our barley is Irish grown. So unfortunately, we have to send Irish grown barley over to Scotland to be peated. There is no one in Ireland that peats. Again, on a small scale, yes, we produce 1.2 million litres, which is 35 tonne every day and a half, 2 days. It's a lot of barley, and it's hard to do in a shed, unfortunately. So And again, I was just at an annual dinner with our malt supplier. There was some whispers of peated maltings being built in the north, but I think everything just at the minute has just been unfortunately parked. I don't think anyone's going to part with that kind of money, so it is something we're hopeful for, but we've stuck to our guns and saying we're producing with Irish grown barley. We want to support Irish farmers. Without Irish farmers, Irish whiskey doesn't exist, never did exist, so it's something very, very close to our hearts, so we'd happily send it over and then eventually bring it back in.
Could you explain the PPM just in terms of where it starts and where it ends as well, for people who don't know?
So my general spiel on it, so the scale of ppm runs from 0 to 200. Anything less than 50 is considered a low peated whiskey. 55 plus is a highly peated whiskey. So ours sits at 55 in the grain, and then by the time it's triple distilled, that goes down to about 22 in this particular dram.
This one's about 15 in spirit.
So fairly light in the terms of smoke intensity. So when you're malting barley, it's not like trying to blast heat through it. It's like drying clothes. You're just trying to get a gentle airflow. Typically in Ireland, that's done with gas or with coal. So it's just about infusing heat to let the moisture evaporate from the grain. So you get that nice, soft, crumbly barley. It's like a biscuit. In Scotland, predominantly, it is done in Ireland as well. But I say that when you use turf, the flavour intensity locks into the grain, so that smoky profile comes through. When people smell a chemical hit like iodine or TCP, some people smell germaline. There's a chemical compound in turf that lies dormant until it's activated with fire, and it's called tetrachlorophenol, and that is literally TCP. So when you smell that, your brain is bang on the money. You're picking up that iodine and chemical hit. The reason that white Westerners particularly have an aversion to that flavour profile is because the first time you encountered that smell is when you were 5 or 6 and you fell off your bike, and your mommy or your granny or whoever put a bit of germaline or TCP on your grazed knee. So the first time you smell something that intense, your brain locks in the feeling and emotion of fear and pain. And when you smell it again 20 years later, when somebody goes, "You ever tried Lefroy?" you get that waft in your face, and the recesses of your memory say, "This is going to be a bad experience." And it takes time to literally untrain your brain into that flavour profile. I said 0 to 200, so there are whiskies that break that scale. So like Octomore, if you're familiar with it, it's about either 235, some of them go up to 300, and the smoke intensity is mental. We'll wait for this to go past. But yeah, the peated whiskey was always massive in Ireland up until the early 1900s. It was the Industrial Revolution that created the schism and splitted it here. The column still coming about in the mid 1800s was a factor, but it was the Industrial Revolution. Belfast and Dublin were two of the biggest ports in the British Empire at that stage, and they got access to coal much faster than our Scottish counterparts. So the railways put coal across the island of Ireland practically overnight. In Scotland, the railways didn't really go up past Edinburgh, and the predominant amount of whiskey was being made in the islands and in the Highlands. So they just continued to use turf, and that smoky flavour got stronger and stronger over the years. Whereas Irish whiskey, we shifted our grain malting production style, and that ultimately shifted the taste and profile of Irish whiskey. So it became known for being softer and sweeter and creamier, much lighter because of the triple distillation, and the punchy heaviness of Scotch prevailed. So people had this idea that smoky meant Scotch and light meant Irish, and that's what we're kind of counteracting now. Generally with peated whiskey from Scotland, because it's double distilled, you will use a lot of turf, double distill it, and then leave it in the cask for 10 plus years to let those harsh notes evaporate. We have very happily flipped that model on its head and used a small amount of turf, triple distilled it to remove the harsh iodine chemical notes at the beginning, so it's a cleaner spirit going in, and we can take it out of the barrel after 3.5, 4 years. Super light in colour, but that's because it hasn't had a huge amount of contact with the wood. But the smoke, the balance is there enough, and it tastes like a much older whiskey at a much higher percent. So say you can do more with it in a shorter space of time at a lower cost price as well, because you have a higher liquid volume, because you haven't encountered 15 years of the angel share. So that's the rough spiel of ppm. My other one is as well, I love tasting peated whiskey with Irish crowds, particularly in the north, because you can always gauge where people were. Some people smell bonfire, some people smell buncrana. So it's a good way to suss your crowd out at particular tastings, and then let you know what jokes you can make for the second part. But yes, we say there's a whole education piece that we've been doing about peated whiskey in Ireland. Whenever I started in the distillery, there were maybe 6 brands of peated Irish whiskey. There's now about 15 or so.
Yeah, I think.
So as I say, it's the fastest growing category within Irish whiskey. As we say, we're seeing the demand for peated maltsters happening here. The appetite of younger, more educated drinkers. In the American market and in Asia as well, we're seeing people who have had a background of Scotch now opening up to the Irish category because they realise you can meet that balance in the middle. So yeah, as I say, it's for peated drinkers and for like newer drinkers, it's a very like it's a rapidly growing and kind of exciting category of Irish.
Will you reuse those casks? They were Madeira, then peated. Would you reuse them to age when it wasn't peated?
Would we reuse the casks?
Yes, absolutely. Most of what we always try and plan our peated production or peated bottlings around our peated production, which tends to be towards the end of the year, so that we're putting peated spirit back into peated barrels that have seen peat before. We do have a light sort of hybrid style of even lighter than this again. So whenever we're transitioning from standard malt into peated malt, there's this really nice product that sort of comes in the middle. So basically we're chasing our standard malt with peat, and again there's just a nice amalgamation of a really, really light profile. So we don't need to age our unpeated spirit into peated barrels. So everything that we do use, it's all about the malt content and not about a peated barrel in particular. But just for consistency, all of our whiskey that we disgorge as peated or our peated distillate goes back into peated barrels 9 times out of 10. Just on the phenols as well. So phenols are heavier than other compounds in whiskey. So that is ultimately why whenever we buy barley at 55 ppm, it ends up at a much lighter 15 ppm in spirit. So to be able to get all of that ppm through in spirit, you'll be taking the real tail end of the distillations, which, trust me, nobody in this room wants. So that's why you lose ppm through distillation. 15 ppm in spirit for a triple distilled whiskey is quite high. So we pull our cuts way back. But again, we have a double distilled profile as well, which is just an absolute monster. To sum it up, we actually had to move our peated barrels in the warehouse away from the other barrels because it was starting to taint spirit. So when you walk into our warehouse, it gets no matter how sensitive or how open the warehouse has been, everyone that walks in goes, "What's that? Like, what's burning?" Like there really is like a bonfire smell in the center of our warehouse.
And then I stub out my cigarette and go, what was that? That's mad. It is worth mentioning as well. Sorry, go on ahead.
Sorry, just to go back a small bit, it might be a silly question, you may not be an answer to it. So we peated our malt over turf.
Yeah.
And then coal turned up. They stopped using coal because what? The smoke is more acrid, it gets hotter, it dries it out too quick.
So the question was, why did we stop using coal and then shift to gas for malting? Or
coal.
accessibility. That's my understanding of it, because they say it was you could still dig peat out in the field, but if you were a city centre based distillery in the likes of Dublin or Belfast, there's not a lot of bog land like close to the heart of the city, whereas coal would have been making its way through in lorry loads or trailer fills.
But coal is direct and turf is direct and coal and gas is indirect, isn't it?
Yeah.
But coal is clean smoke. There's no
flavour to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
it
like
burnt.
coal clean.
It burnt.
Like you get a lot of shit.
Coal smoke isn't
But it's about do you know when you have like barbecue charcoal? It's about creating heat. Probably I've never been to a maltster, but the barley would have been laid on slats on the roofed area, and the heat source would have been on the ground. So it was creating that heat and airflow through it. Had you done that with turf, the same heat intensity would have been there, but the flavour, the smoke would have carried through, is my understanding.
Yeah, well, again, it was just the accessibility to coal. So most of the city distilleries had access to railroads. The more rural distilleries did not. They continued using peat because it was readily available. It was their fuel source for cooking, for heating their homes, and again, fuel in stills. coal was cheaper, so it was a natural choice for people to move away from. A very different profile. There's a lot more sulfur in the way coal's burned. It burns with heat. As for turf that's slightly wet, smoulders. It doesn't burn. It doesn't have a red glow. Like all maltsters will try and stop that glow and allow the smoke to come through. Coal burns very, very differently, and they then moved away to blowing the heat from coal fires up in through kilns, as opposed to whenever they at the same concept and the smoke and heat was coming up through the barley. I suppose they moved it to indirect drying then after, when they realised it was brutal.
Michelle?
Just on that, I think using like Yoichi distillery still uses coal. There's a few distilleries that still do it.
Yeah, so there's just a question about some distilleries still using coal. It's probably in their wash still. So distilleries will use coal for basically creating a Maillard reaction. That's the wash still. That's basically burning yeast in the bottom of their tank. It's the way old spirits were all made, direct fired stills. We just don't have that anymore. Well, there's still some guys that do it. A lot less with coal and more gas.
But probably slightly more difficult to keep a standard temperature if you're doing direct fire. I was going to say if it's like shoveling coal, you're having to.
That's the skill, but it was like coal men on ships. It was the same thing, regulating the boiler.
Fair.
So it was.
So
Fine.
if we're happy enough, folks, Will and I suffer from a medical condition that we can't have 3 whiskies and not have a cigarette. So we're going to take a quick 15-minute break or so. Matt's going to jump in to wrap up said break.
Yeah. So I'm going to just unlike is so you can go have your cigarette, or you can go to the bathroom and not have a Homer Simpson moment of urinal cake eroding, gone!
On the mic.
On the mic, exactly, yes. We're going to take a quick, maybe 10-15 minute break, so we'll come back at about 1:30. So if anyone here in the room needs to go to the bathroom and erode some urinal cakes, fire right ahead. We're going to just... The folks in the room here, there is a QR code on the tasting mat. There's a
Link in the chat soon.
yes, and there'll be a link in the chat soon. Alex is putting that in there. There's a Irish Whisky Society WhatsApp community which has different chats for news, events, tastings, information about our upcoming bottlings, information about our upcoming tastings, photos from the tastings, things like that. So you can be involved with the society. You can have chats amongst members, and you can always go off and have your own separate chats as well. If, for example, someone gets a bottle that no one else gets, and you want to do a little bottle share, that's always fine. We're just going to take a quick little break. There will be in that chat, for the folks at home, like I said earlier, a discount code for the whiskies not here and here from Hinch, and folks in the room will be able to obviously use that as well. So just come back in 10 minutes. all the room.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to get the guys. I just get these guys to shut up.
100%.
All right, folks. Do we want more whiskey?
Right.
Really? Yeah, we do. All right. Go.
So, welcome back. I'll continue, and then you can do the two new ones.
100%.
So dram number 4. This is again one of the warehouse exclusives. It is for sale tonight. You can't buy this anywhere else. You can't buy it online. You can't buy it in any other retail shops. This is exclusively from the distillery or at a whiskey tasting that we come to. It says 19 on the tasting mat. This is actually 21 years old, closer to 22. 19 years in a refill, second fill bourbon cask, and then the remainder of its life in a refill Oloroso cask. And again, the same Oloroso that has matured the 15-year-old. It didn't chat an awful lot about that cask, but it's not an old cellar, but it's a seasoned sherry cask, so it's European oak, so it's quite tannic. Seasoned Oloroso barrel, 2 years. And said this is a refill now that it's been in. So again, this is a Bushmills liquid. It's not ours. And 54%, isn't it? Oh,
I get 54.1.
54.1. Yep. So give it a whirl. I'll actually try this.
So on the sherry side of it, you probably tasted a lot of PX finishes or Pedro Jimenez, which to me generally are sweet, and then more sweet. From what I've learned in my time at Hinch with Oloroso finishes, it's a far more layered flavour profile. You'll pick out spices and then fruit and then like cakey notes. So to me, it's like it's a deeper kind of pull on the flavour profile. The Oloroso barrels are also much bigger than a PX generally.
Well, these are hogshead, so they're 250 litre barrels.
So
But yeah, traditionally much bigger. Traditionally 500 litres. What's the thoughts on this one?
for the people at home, there's a lot of going on.
Yeah, like these tend to be obviously 20, 21, 22-year-old whiskies are damn good. Again, Bushmills probably definitely the pioneers of Irish single malt. So very, very good dram, and we're just very lucky to have just a boatload of it in the distillery. We probably have about 250 of these barrels left. That's filled barrels because we've rebarreled them all, so they're not sitting as low fills.
Is that warehouse 1 and warehouse 2?
Warehouse 1. Warehouse 3, by the way, it is the first warehouse that we built on site. So just in our systems that we use all of our stock control, Warehouse 1 and Warehouse 2 was already used. So that is why it was Warehouse 3 is the first warehouse built on site at the distillery.
So I meant to say in the first half as well, so the wee leaflets that you have on your table, and all the information is available online as well. There's also a warehouse tour which is launched in the last maybe 5-6 months.
Yeah.
So as I say, we have our own distillery tour. We do a gin school at the distillery as well. We also produce 9th Wave Irish gin. Our gin school was awarded the best tourism experience in Northern Ireland in 2022. It is class crack. Whiskey tours walk and talk with tasting at the end. Gin school is carnage from the outset, which we love. But it's basically, we start you off with a gin and tonic. We give you the history of gin, which is hilarious as well. I could do a whole other tasting on it because it's just funny stories of taxation and it going wrong. But the gin school, it's like a hands-on interactive workshop where you build your own bottle. So if you like sweet or fruity or spicy, we'll walk you through your flavour wheel, and everybody leaves with their own 500 mils of their own individual gin. No other gin like it in the world. Some of them are delicious, some are an absolute disaster, but you can just come back and make it again, so it's fine. In the winter, we run a workshop as well called Some Like It Hot. It's a workshop that I wrote, and it focuses on hot whiskey and Irish coffee, two beautiful medicinal drinks with kind of unknown stories behind them. I always say like a hot whiskey is a good like cure-all for even if you feel a cold coming on you between the months of November to March. I will feel a cold coming on me about 8 times a week. So it's better to be safe than sorry. But the warehouse tour, as I has recently launched, so it's cask strength drams. You get out to our maturation shed. It's about a 2-hour workshop, and there's no more than 10 people on it. So very intimate, really interactive. You get to get out into the warehouse. I've been there, say me and Will started about a week apart in the distillery. Not that the magic of the distillery has worn away. Whenever we walk through with tours and people are kind of awestruck by the copper and the stills and stuff, after about a year, you're kind of going, yep, it's grand. And it's still a class place to work. The magic of the warehouse has never gone away. Every time you walk into it, the smell of wood and alcohol and the scale of the place, every single time I go in to take a photograph or to do a sampling or something, the wee hairs just start to tingle like, this is what the crack is, like this is what it's. So it's a very, cheesy as it sounds, it's a very like magical space. So it's really cool to get out to. There's not every distillery matures on site as well. We're very, very lucky. From a production point of view, it's maybe a nightmare because we mature on site, we bottle on site. It can be labour intensive. The guys in production, I was bottling yesterday morning as well. So everybody it's all hands to the pump. But the beauty of having our maturation warehouse on site is that we get to do cask strength draws. So one of the Warehouse 3 collections, I can't remember which it was, we had guys up from the National Bar in Belfast. There was 8 of them coming up for some staff training. And I was taking them out to the warehouse just to show it. And Will and the distillers had like 12 barrels in the yard and we're sitting pulling samples. We're like, come on over, have a taste. And then we kind of done like, right, vote for your favourite. And I think that ended up being the Sauterne, which is out at the minute. So as I say, it's you get a much closer touch to the liquid. So yeah, so if you do get a chance, we've the first warehouse that opened about 2 years, a year and a half ago now.
No, it'll be over 2 years. Yeah, it'll be over 2 years now at this point.
And we're building another 2 warehouses on site as well. So as I say, they're currently under construction, so it's all up and go. So yes.
Warehouse 4 and 5 collections coming soon.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, Warehouse 3. We've printed too many labels. Any questions on this drama? It's obviously this tends to be everyone's fan favourite.
What's the price on this one?
This is so the price for the 21-year-old refill is £89. In today's market that would be significantly more. We bought this 7 years ago, and at some stage I'm going to get sacked for telling people this. We bought this whiskey at £30 litre. In today's market, like if we went out as a distillery to purchase that, that's £280 litre. And again, because we've just been free rein, we didn't really tell the board that we were bringing out the warehouse collection until it happened, and there just happened to be a 22-year-old Madeira in there at the time.
To be clear, Will pulled the trigger at this at like 4 o'clock on a Friday, and it was like.
You're blaming him?
Well, no, I think I was in Germany. I was at a festival, and I was like, "Is there any new releases?" Just so I can tell the distributor, and they were like, "Nope, nothing." And then on Instagram, I was like, "A warehouse what collection?" And like rang back and was just like, "Yeah." So if they single cask, premium cask strength liquid, and it was a late pull of the trigger, but it worked. So we can't fault them.
Yeah, it's been like it genuinely has been incredible. The objective was we wanted a bit more footfall in the distillery. We didn't think it would go the way that it has. We expected averaging a cask per month. It's about 4 or 5. Sometimes more again, just coming into the busier periods and gifting season tends to be busier, but it honestly has been remarkable. And again, we've loads of these whiskies, and yes, they may not be ours, and the narrative is about our liquid, but again, it's really good whiskey that we don't want to flood into the secondary market for people to bottle at 200, 300, 400 pounds. So we will exclusively sell these through the distillery at that price point. Probably never any higher than £100. So and there's loads of it, which is great news. Loads.
Very good.
I should be saying it's really, really rare and everyone get up, but we genuinely have lots of it. And again, in 2 years' time, we're going to have a 25-year-old, and again, it's probably going to be very, very similar priced to what it currently is. So, and again, that's just what we want to do. People that have never had the opportunity to try a 25-year-old or 22-year-old, you're going to be able to do it for £100. You can split that bottle with someone if you don't want to drink it all. If you can't afford that £100 bottle, because as much as that is really, really cheap for what it actually is, it's still a lot of money for people. But again, so that's purely what that is. It's why there's no frills with it. It's why the labels are handwritten. They're all the same. There's no fancy packaging. And again, it's about opening a bottle of whiskey and sharing it with someone that you just wouldn't get the opportunity to do with otherwise.
So Will had started saying it before Whiskey Live. It was about being priced for consumption and not collection, and it's a thing that's it's this last 6 months particularly. It's drawn Hinch as a business closer to whiskey societies and clubs and to the whiskey influencers. It's about getting you really old, really premium liquids, but at affordable prices. So it's about people who are not putting it on the top shelf to never look at it again. It's crack it open and share it, as Will said. In the distillery, we're all whiskey drinkers. We're all young enough people that are struggling with mortgages or rent or don't have a plethora of disposable income. So to be able to get decent whiskey at a reasonable price, because whenever we brought out the 21-year-olds, Shush Mills brought out a very similar liquid with an extra couple of zeros on it. So it was nice for us to kind of sit and to say to the clubs and the influencers and just be like, just taste them and then see what your bank thinks.
There was
Bush Mills wouldn't have been Cask strength.
no, it wouldn't have. There was this actual cask in particular. So we brought it to a show, or no, it was a society, and someone reached out to us and wanted to buy the remainder. It was about $8,500. They were like, "Oh, that's a great collection item. We're going to put that away and sell it." We were like, "Unfortunately, you're not getting them." So we've refused to sell these to people that have openly said this. We're putting this back in the secondary market at some stage, because that's not the objective. And we get it that people will do that, but that's not what it's about. It's about opening them and not being afraid to open them. Said I work with distillers who have never had the opportunity to try these, and that's really what inspired the release of these whiskies. Is that everyone's favourite dram tonight?
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah.
It might be.
Yeah.
It's a hot choice.
Yeah. It is. It's a cracker wee whiskey, like for
15-year-old class.
Yes.
That's a 0.3, right? So it's like,
What's that? Sorry.
it's a 0.3, right? So you're coming in, you're close on, it's 11 of 11, 20, 0.3, right? So
2003. Sorry, I was wondering what you were saying. Yeah. I was like, zero. I was like, warehouse 3. Yeah. 2003.
it's really cool to see someone who's selling it at a price point that's available, not making it royal.
Well, again, look, I said we are consumers first and foremost, so that is, and we want our whiskey to be drank. Like we produce over 8 million bottles a year. There's and I know that's not relevant to the source liquid, but there's no point us to selling 8 million bottles to sit in a shed or sit on someone's shelf. We'll end up like Port Ellen or something like that, mothballed for 100 years, and then someone will decide to reopen it because everyone's eventually drank all their Port Ellen, and then there's more to sell. That's not what we it's not what we aspire to be.
Respect for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Any questions in the room? Any questions online?
Was there an emphasis on the finish on that? Because that particular whiskey has a seriously long finish.
So question just on the finish of the whiskey, not in particularly. So we just decided whenever we were moving, and once we built Warehouse 3, we were moving all of our stock back so that we could store it ourselves as opposed to paying somebody else to store it. And then we just revatted a lot of this, so we took it out of the refill bourbons and then we put it into a selection of casks that we had at that time. There was Madeiras, there was Chateau de la Ligne casks, so our own barrels from the Chateau that Terry owns, not this Terry, and just a selection. So not in particular. What we've done with Warehouse 3 is that, again, personally, I think there's distilleries that, again, a head distiller will get the opportunity to put their name on the label, and all the kudos goes to them. I think any distilling team or any team that matters, only like they're as good as everyone else in the team. So this is it's not about me being able to select all of these and deliver them. It's about the other team members as well. So everyone in the distillery gets an opportunity to pick a different barrel. Sometimes we'll just go, right, we're picking that pallet, and then they've only 6 barrels to choose from, and that just happened to be one of the selections. So it's never, the beauty about this is it's not regimented. It's not following a pattern or this is how we want to do things. It's just, there's 6 barrels, pick your favourite and we'll release it. If there's another one that you really like, it's going to come out again at some other point. Yes, you may not be the one that gets to choose it, but somebody else in the distillery will get to. And again, it's nice because they're handwritten. And you ever remember when you went back to school after the summer and you started writing again for the first time, and you had a hand cramp after about 5 minutes. That is what this is like. So this one in particular, again, whenever I decided really late on a Friday that we were going to release this on a Saturday, I went home, proud as punch, writing all these labels, showing them to the better half. She's like, "There, class," she goes, "That date's wrong." So I literally wrote all my labels, thought this was going to be class, and then had to redo them all again that evening.
Like 5 drams deep.
5 drams deep.
Nightmare.
So,
Any other wee questions on the last of the warehouse before we move on to our final 2? Lovely. So the last 2 that we're tasting, folks, is our own liquid. As again, so I said, we've had a wee bit of it with the Madeira refill, but this is our inaugural global single malt release in 2 different forms. So you have standard is the wrong word, but you have the unpeated single malt and the peated single malt. Before we get into the liquid, I was chatting with a couple of the guys during the break about the prevalence of County Down in whiskey, and then a wee bit more into that about Hinch yourselves as well. So County Down's always had a really, really strong distilling history, and again, we have been proud as punch to become part of that narrative and the resurge of northern distilleries of County Down. Excellent agricultural areas around us, so as I say, we get all of our grain from County Down. Really, really good water source. We source from Silent Valley, which was the benchmark of water purification in Ireland for a long time. They did not filter the water up until 2009, and then they just had to for legal reasons. And excellent access to the railways for transport, because half of Belfast is within County Down. So there's more distilleries in Down than there is in Dublin. But as I say, we're priding ourselves as being the distillation capital of the island. Again, chatting with the guys during the break, there's a couple of lads from County Down in here as well. But it's big up, lads. We're taking over. But it's as I say, there's loads of distilleries in Down, but every one of them is telling a slightly different story and producing at different volumes. We have the luxury of having a fairly affluent financial backer, so we didn't face the financial obstacles that some ones would. There's other distilleries that have done crowdfunding. There's other ones that pride themselves on being the smallest on the island with really, really niche batch liquid. From we opened, we have tripled capacity. So we added extra washbacks a couple of years ago. So we're now hitting about 1.2 million litres per annum. So we're marked as the largest independent distillery in the north and the second largest independent on the island. We produce more peated liquid than
the rest of the
every
island
other
combined.
distillery on the island combined. So as I say, that thing about being bold in stature, like being big but well balanced, and being like unafraid to kind of to push stuff. We're young, but we are certainly by no means small. So as I said, to show now what we are doing with our liquid, it's a very exciting period for the distillery itself. It's worth mentioning from our liquid, our actual stills themselves here. So these are named after 3 local mountains. You have Donard, Croob and Wee Binion. Donard and Wee Binion are both within the Mourne Mountains, and Croob sits within the Dramara Hills. You can actually see Slieve Croob from the distillery itself, but these are in the Mournes. Donard is the highest peak in the north, and this holds about 10,000 litres. Croob is the source of the River Lagan, which splits Belfast in 2, and that holds about 5,500 litres, and Wee Binion overlooks the Silent Valley Reservoir, which is where we draw our water from. So they're all linked into it. Some distilleries will name their stills after the owner's daughter. Terry only has 2 daughters, and we had 3 stills, so it had to be done. The line arms, now it says, so this, again, my days as a tour guide, I spent a lot of time talking about these beautiful vessels. Copper, absolutely integral to distillation. It's a porous metal, it's soft, it absorbs harsh chemical notes. Distillation came about around the year 700 in Iran, and it was originally used for perfume distillation. I thought that was somebody going, yeah. I was like, somebody really likes perfume. Like a snake charmer or something, maybe.
You mentioned Iran.
Yeah, it's fair. We've all had a couple of cask strengths, it's fine. So yeah, as it says, perfume distillation was the original form. Christian monks brought it back to Ireland, played about with the recipe. And then pot stills became the style. Column stills came in around the 1850s. But so for our particular stills, every distillery has a different shape still. and that will dictate your base spirit, which then ultimately dictates your whiskey. Our line arm, this bit here, it tilts back at about 27 degrees. So the idea of that, if you've seen other distilleries, some of their line arms will tilt forward, hitting into the column, so it creates a faster distillation. Whenever that liquid turns into a vapor, it hits off this middle chamber here, so it's reflux. It's that copper contact, stripping out things like sulfur and iodine and the rough chemicals we don't want. If that has not been properly distilled to the level we want it, that will drop back into the pot. It will not run through to the condenser column where we'll then catch it. So we get the kind of the highest quality of the cut every single time. Everything runs through Donard. And then whenever we go to Krug and Binion, that's when the distillers get more particular. They'll cut off their heads and tails. And again, with the chats over lunch of going, what do you actually do down there? Will and the team have explained that the cuts that they take are higher. So your heads and tails have the rough chemical notes that we don't want, like your methanol. Can't create alcohol without creating methanol. If you drink enough of it, it'll kill you. If you drink small amounts, it will detach your retina, which is why we have the phrase blind drunk. And that's genuinely true. So as I said, the cuts that we take are higher. So the hearts, all the alcohol and flavour we want, we could be greedy and take a larger cut of that heart, but Will and the guys are fussy downstairs. They want a cleaner base spirit going in, so they'll give more heads and tails either side. It doesn't be wasted. It goes back into its previous chamber and is used again like a cookie cutter moving forward. But you'll start off with 8% at about 10,000 litres and end up with around 80% alcohol with about roughly 800 to 1,000 litres. So that's the distillation element of it. This particular part of it is science. As we've explained through the whole maturation process, that's the art form. That's where personal preference and the love and interpretation of the barrels comes into play. So as I say, the stills themselves, absolutely crucial to the liquid you're producing. If you put crap in, you'll get crap out, is the long and short. Pardon?
The stills 4 sides? Or
4 sides, yes. No.
The Forsyths are the... Sorry.
Was it not?
No, Forsyths came in and fixed a few problems
I
for us.
knew they were there at some point.
So whenever we built our distillery, it was just whenever Forsyths had finished commissioning Macallan. So there was a 3.5 year wait on copper vessels, brewing vessels, etc. from Forsyths. Our owner is incredibly impatient, so he decided he wanted to build a distillery. He wasn't waiting 3 years, so we went with Barras, an Italian company. Like 80% of new distilleries in Ireland, they are Italian stills, Italian copper. Forsyths, the 5th generation coppersmiths now have realised they lost an awful lot of business because of the job at Macallan. So they moved over. They shipped over one of their employees who was maintenance, coppersmith, etc. Planted them bang slap in the middle of Ireland to regain all of that business. Forsyths, I said 5th generation, they've 700 employees. That's a lot of people making stills and stainless steel pipes. So they moved them over knowing that their customer service would ultimately win back all of that business. And they weren't far wrong. Really, really personal. So the chairman of Forsyths landed at our distillery, said, look, we will look after you, we'll give you whatever you want, blah, blah, blah. And it was them that expanded our distillery. They fixed a lot of problems that we had. Our distillery was built during COVID, as I said, by Italians. That's challenging. I
There's a lot of swearing. We were well able. Yeah.
I've been employed just over 4 years, and I've had one conversation with the company that supplied our entire equipment. And I could ring the chairman for Forsyths in the morning, and there will be, for example, we broke down on a Friday evening, 9:30, and 6 o'clock in the morning there was 2 engineers over from Scotland for the entire weekend, and they had a 5.5 hour drive to get to us. That's customer service, and we hadn't even engaged them for the expansion at this point. So that summed up how hungry they are to get, and they've just expanded their facilities in the south here as well. So they look after pretty much all the maintenance now for all the distilleries. They are a bit more expensive, but again, if you pick a phone call or you pick the phone up at 9 o'clock on a Friday evening, someone's going to be there to fix the problem. So, sorry, Terry.
You're grand. I just realised I've been telling lies for 4 years.
I think you're used to it.
Yeah. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Quick
So-
question, just because on the mats it doesn't have the percentages.
Yes,
Because we didn't have the labels.
that's fair. Yeah, correct. We didn't. So I dropped these to Alex when we were coming back from Cork Whisky Society.
Because they weren't released at the time.
So yeah, this is very special. So say these are 43%. Again, kind of back to the first whiskey. This is for the global market. We play about with higher ABVs for stuff at home, for different limited releases. But for something that we were putting out, we're in 35 markets globally. We're expanding into different territories every month. We have an ambassador out in Hong Kong at the minute. I just literally got word that I'm heading to America and possibly Canada in September. So as I say, I know it's awful, but sure. There was a guy I was doing one of the, pardon? We do, you're looking at him. Yeah. I'll speak the language, we're fine. Yeah, always.
It's a big country.
It is, to be fair. So we're moving into different spots every month as we go on. So for something that was to be accessible to a global palate, it needed to make sense commercially and needed to be approachable to not the non-whiskey drinker, but to the person who doesn't have whiskey all the time, to the likes of yourselves who have a fairly upskilled palate and know what you're talking about with distillation, with cask finishes and stuff. Much as we absolutely love yous, you are not the
You don't drink 9 million bottles a year.
I was going to say, it's not that you're you're not the target audience.
Please prove me wrong.
Challenge it, yeah. I was going to say, do it.
With 250 barrels, a 22-year-old to get through first, and then the core range is 43%, and it is that accessibility thing, and it helps us break barriers of, again, what tariffs, price points, duty rates, etc. So again, it is the entry level is the wrong word because it nearly insults the whiskey, but that's what they are. So again, trying to draw more people in. This in particular, so these two single malts, they're both priced at the same price. On the higher end, they're £32 a bottle. Where we have set our recommended retail price is £30. That is currently a 4.5-year-old whiskey, and they're priced at that point. People are going, oh, that's amazing. The story behind that £30 price point for these is when that's an 8-year-old whiskey, we will put a statement on it and it will be the same price. We could have had this in market at £25, which definitely would have turned heads, but we priced it at 30 so that whenever the age statement does come in 3.5 years, that it will be the same price. So just because we put an age statement on it doesn't mean we're going to make it 40, 45, 50 or 60 quid a bottle. That's the price point. We're making money, the distributor's making money, and we've got a lot of happy consumers.
And equally, we could have gone the other way with it, of having the kind of brashness of going, well, this is our inaugural global single malt release, give us £90 a bottle, and coming out with that, as some other distilleries have done and said, well, this is our own liquid, we blended before, so you, the consumer, should be happy to pay a premium to taste our own juice straight away, which we've seen other ones do and then not be successful with it. So we say it's been priced at that approachable point, at a consistent point as well. Say it's still profitable for us, it's affordable for the consumer, but as I say, at the price point and at the ABV, it opens up conversations for me whenever I go into bars, because the amount of people say we're all neat whiskey drinkers, the amount of people you go to, particularly at like food shows in Balmoral and stuff like that it's not a whiskey show, but people will taste it and go, very good, what would you put that with? And I would be like, more. I'd put it with a second. So I'd always say, and again, I'm very like, drink it how you like it. I love a whiskey and ginger during the summer. I love my Irish coffees, love a hot whiskey, If you need something like Coca-Cola, I'll always say try bourbon, try vodka, try leaving. But if you need to get the clap, I've been giving you gold all night.
That's the first one.
I think macerated food's got the most laughs.
So we are actually, if you do fancy coming up, so Belfast Whisky Week is the 21st of July to the 30th, and there's like 100 events on it. It's a mad festival, but we're doing a distillery day at the distillery itself. But I got chatting with a chef at a food show that we were doing 2 weeks ago, when his venue is being leased out on the Sunday evening of it for Whisky Week. They had no actual event planned, So my plan now, it's still in the early works, but we're hoping to do Macerated Fruit, the whiskey comedy show. So it's going to be an hour-long show of me getting drunk with a microphone. So if you fancy coming up to Belfast for it, to say it'll be whiskey, it'll be a lot of this. But yeah, it should be a good night's crack. But anyway, enough about me. What do you think of me? So no, the liquid, folks. So as I say, the single malt and the peated single malt. Again, this is something that we wanted to come out with two hands punching for it, because I say we're very, very peat driven at the whiskey or at the distillery. Again, if Will could take Hinch and replant it on Islay, it could be an issue. It could possibly be done, but say there's a big smoke love within the distillers. The first one is to say the Oloroso and the bourbon. So it's more, say, blending whiskey is the wrong word for it, but it's that one that we wanted to open with, to say, can drink it neat, do stick it in a coffee. You had mentioned, Matt, about the 15-year-old being in a hot whiskey. This is the one that I say it's maybe not as much sacrilege to do that, versus £30 versus 55, 65. The 3 years bourbon, 6 months Oloroso.
No, everything in these are full maturation. So there's more casks in there than what the label actually states, but that's the lion's share. The bourbon and the Oloroso, they are full maturation. There is Shiraz and Ruby Port in there as well, and to a small degree, 43%. So people will assume that it's chill filtered. It is not. Put that in a fridge, and it will start to create a haze within the bottle. Again, it's completely harmless, but it is flavour. We spend £400,000 a month trying to put flavour into whiskey. Our objective is to not strip it out before the consumer gets it. Sorry, question?
Why would you put it in the fridge?
No, don't. I don't.
The fear on your face.
No, just the chill filtration. That's how we detect if a whiskey's been chill filtered or not, whether it says it on the label or not. Whiskey that we buy in the distillery or I buy at home, I'll put it in the fridge for a while to see if it creates a haze, and it'll either tell me it's been chill filtered or not. I don't drink my whiskey cold, but it identifies whether what's on the label is true or not. Those are two single malts. If you put them in the fridge, they will, after a while, create a haze, and that proves that it's not chill filtered.
Sorry, so that was full.
I'm sorry.
How long in the fridge? Just curious. Is it 10 minutes or an hour?
No. It needs to be really, really cold. So it will need to be in there 4 or 5 hours, unless you've got a really good fridge.
Sorry, that full maturation in
Bourbon, Oloroso, Ruby Port, and Shiraz. So the Ruby Port and Shiraz is not on the label.
Is that because they're just very small percentage, or?
Mainly yes, but again, we didn't want to give everyone the secrets away, but then we did.
The font is too big,
so
had to cut something.
No, again, that was always meant to be bourbon and cherry, and again, unfortunately it's what the consumer tends to be attracted to. Some people say they don't like Ruby Port, they don't like Shiraz, but most people like Oloroso and cherry. But they are in there in small components. They're about 6.5% to 7% each. Those two components. Again, full maturation.
4.5-year-old.
Yeah, 4.5. So I said that's 4.5 now. It will develop into an 8-year-old whiskey, and again at the same price point.
Peated is the same.
Peated is the same, yeah. Interestingly on the two whiskies, we thought these would be sort of neck and neck in terms of what would be more popular. The peated is about 70% of the volume of sales, so that sums up the demand for peated whiskey. Has everyone tried it? We've done an awful lot of.
Yes.
Very good.
So again, there's no doubt about it. It's still a young dram, but again, really, really approachable. There's still what we know is our Hinch DNA. So if you ever get the opportunity to try our new make spirit, that is still identifiable in there, but it's not offensive, it's not scary, it's not off-putting, but it's something that we don't want to lose. So a lot of people will tell you that 60% of a whiskey's flavour comes from a barrel. I find that offensive because we spend £400,000 a month making whiskey that we put flavour into. If it was more about the barrel, we'd just put neutral spirit in and end up with the same result. That doesn't happen. So what we produce in the distillery, what comes off our stills, is the forefront of what we want people to identify. Whenever we want you to lift a bottle and go, that's Hinch. Like, we want people to know. It's like Bushmills is very identifiable. Like, you know that it's Bushmills when you get to try it. That's what we want for Hinch, and we never want to lose that. So there's some refill barrels in there as well. Any questions on the single malt? Yeah, again, coming off the back of a couple of casks.
I was just going to say, we've tasted in a funny... We wanted to finish with the single malts to kind of showcase these, but we have gone from 60% back down to 40. As I say, it's the cream and milk analogy.
But it's light in a good way, like it's very easy to get into.
I shouldn't say this, it's sessionable, and it's not something...
Quaffable.
Again, responsibly.
Quaffable.
But that's what it is, and that's what we wanted. Like again, we produce 9 million bottles a year. We want people to have a second dram of this. We don't want you to have one dram and then move on. That's what it's about. It's about enjoying, again, whether that's at home, in a bar, whatever. Price points and offence, so you can have more than one. It's not a treat, again, because it is so accessible. And that's what we wanted this to be about. And again, it is being approachable. It will get a little bit heavier, just as it spends 3.5 years longer in cask, but it'll just be a bit richer in terms of its oiliness and weight. So just with age, it will develop a little bit. Yeah.
The finish does carry longer on the peated versus the non-peated.
Yeah.
Kind of coats them out.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Obviously, if they're the same set of one's peated and one's not, are you planning to do that going forward for later age releases? So let's say for 8 years, you're saying you have an 8-year peated, 8-year peated. Are they going to be always like a dual?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, just the question asking, are these going to be both age statement? That yes. So these whiskies that you see today, we're not going to bring out a new variant. This will just develop into an 8-year-old. Said, and that will be our entry level whiskey. Current climate, again, we're like as distillers, and not everyone will want this. We want people to try our whiskey at 3.5 years old. We want people to come on a bit of a journey, because what we get to try in the distillery is remarkable. Whether it's 1 year, 2 years, like we've done tours of people and give them 2.5-year-old whiskey, and they've compared it to 8 and 10-year-old whiskies that they've had, and they've spent £100 a bottle on. That's the journey that we want people to be able to come on, whether it's something that you would buy and drink or not. We want people to experience whiskey at different ages, because it's what we get enjoyment out of in the distillery, in the warehouse.
Go ahead.
What about pot still?
Pot still. So we had a question during the break about pot still expansion. We did say, as part of the core range initially, say it was a pot still that we had sourced. Whenever it ran out, we chose not to bring in another version of it. We've kind of positioned ourselves, so from my point of view, as a premium single malt distillery. I love pot still. As I say, I think it's a brilliant, for me, it's a really good educational piece to chat to non-Irish audiences about the difference of pot still, about the history of it with taxation, about the mixture of the still type, the elements coming into it, and your grain composition as well. So as I say, it's a lovely drama I can wax lyrical about. But as to whether or not we will produce it,
so on our pot still profile there, we will, to answer the question, yes, we will produce pot still. Part of what we wanted to do is, again, yes, pot still is the Irish whiskey, but it was always regional. So like every region of or every county had something a little bit different depending on what was available to them. That is our ambition for pot still. We don't just want to make a generic 70-30, 60-40 pot still. So part of our, again, in 2021 we moved all of our barley purchasing to Ireland, so everything that we use is certified Irish growing. By 2027, 2028, we are hoping to have all of the barley grown within County Down, which is proving to be a challenge, because most of the farmers in County Down are either feedstock or cattle farmers, and beef tends to be a lot of. So converting a farmer into growing something that they're unfamiliar with, that has risks associated with it, is challenging. But again, it's rewarding if they can achieve it. So we've invested quite heavily. Like, we've bought really poor barley from farmers, because if we didn't buy that off them in year 1, they wouldn't produce it in year 2. They'll always get better. So we've bought really, really expensive barley. That's what we want for our pot still. So part of what we do as well is what's called regenerative farming. So instead of pumping fields full of chemicals and just to maintain nutrients, our farmers actually go through, say, field A is growing barley for 2 years, it will then transition into rye, oats, peas, things like that. That is going to determine our pot still. So we haven't sat down going, this is what we want our pot still to look like. That is going to be dictated by what a farmer needs to put in the soil. So again, a distillery, a big distillery that I'm a huge fan of is Bruichladdich. A very, very similar blueprint to what they do in terms of their practices. They look after their locals, they support all their local farmers, and whatever that farmer has to grow, they have committed to buy, and they will produce something with it. God knows what it's going to be, but they will produce 100% rye for 1 year, no matter how difficult it is, just so that farmer's getting something back. And that's what we plan on doing. So our pot still will always change. But again, we have a single malt narrative. So pot still we don't chat about an awful lot, but we do have plans for it.
The difference between the third one that we had, Warehouse 3, the Madeira finish, which was a cask length,
Yeah.
and this one, which is, it looked almost like you're going for a flavour profile for the two, the malted, sorry, the peated and the unpeated. What's the difference between those two whiskies, the third and the sixth?
Third and the sixth.
Go ahead.
Third and the sixth. Third is a component of six. So what we done in the Warehouse 3 collection, we never told anyone because we knew people would collect them. Every component that is in the unpeated has been sold in the distillery as a single cask. Nobody has known that, and again, we didn't tell anyone because people would have been buying them to collect them, and it's the exact same with the peated.
Every your own blend at home.
Every component of what is in dram number 6 has been sold as a single cask in the distillery before all of these were released. Everyone all the distillers knew this, so they all have a bottle of each of those now core bottlings as their individual component, and it's just something that we didn't want to tell people because said we knew it would become a collector's item or a series. So that is the dram. I said dram 3 is just a component of dram 6, and it just happens to be my favourite dram is dram 3.
Sorry?
Dram 3 is actually my favourite whiskey that we've ever released to date.
They're both very good. No,
Yeah.
So I assume everyone's tried dram 6. Yeah.
No, sorry.
Sorry, I assumed some people have moved on. Said it's not offensive. It's not a huge peated whiskey. Nice and approachable again. It's the gateway drug before we release the double distilled peateds and stuff like that.
The PPM.
PPM. So again, PPM in this is about 13, 14. So it's a little bit lighter than some of the casks that we used in this. Was just a little bit lighter than the Madeira. Again, really light. Again, it smells like a different smoke, but again, this at cask strength is very similar to dram number 3. I get especially in the Madeira, so dram number 3, it's like a heathery coal dust was one of the words described in the distillery. It's like quite an ashy smoke, which I really like. There's a bit of a dryness to it, but again, it still has a level of sweetness.
Go ahead.
No, you said something that was really ambitious earlier on. You said you wanted someone to taste it, no, that's a Hinch and not a Bushmills.
He said that, I didn't.
Yeah.
I will stick to my I'll stick to my guns.
Yeah, no, stick to it. That's really good. So how are you going to marry that with, you're saying it's, the peated is 70% of the sales and the 30. Like, what's your identity going to be going forward? This is a Hinch, not a Bushmills, or not a Cooley juice.
There'll be a slight, I can't say an awful lot on that exact point, but again, we have Hinch, as everyone knows it, as that brand. There may be iterations of other brands that is known purely as it. So there'll be, but
one of the tasting notes that we had, again, we tossed it about, we didn't end up writing it down, but for the peated new make was sooty and fruity. So it was like a wee bit smoky, wee bit fruity. But that to me, as I say, is our, it's a bulk of our taste. Obviously, not with some of the blends, not with other bits we put out, but a wee bit of smoke and a wee bit of sweet. So as I say, it maybe they're very bland notes, but as I say, sooty and fruity kind of summed it up. As I say, what Will's ambition with the distillers and with the narrative of the research of peated Irish whiskey with County Down distilleries. with playing about with double and triple distillation, of kind of doing like a mix of the two, of like that smear distillation.
Yeah.
So is that we're in the early days of it now, but I would say in 3 or 4 years' time, the whiskey connoisseurs of the Irish crowd definitely will be able to sniff and taste and kind of go, it's very hinchy.
So is that kind of what you're aiming to be like Ireland's Peated Distillery, that everyone will smell the Peated and go, okay, that's Hinch.
Yeah, basically.
Connemara who? Yeah. Oh, sorry, Jesus.
Oh, don't talk seriously. You had the bonfires, you had.
Thank you. Too far. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like again, when you said a whiskey connoisseur or a whiskey fan or whatever, and they mention Islay as smoky whiskey, we want that to be known. County Down has a massive heritage, untold stories of peated whiskey. The whole of County Down, even where our distillery is today, was all bog. There was more bog in County Down than there was in anywhere else in Ireland, which is hard to believe. And typically, the Scots, because obviously they knew we were going to be good at this, drained. It was actually the Scottish that drained County Down. So passing from Belfast to Dublin was completely impossible. You had to head towards Sligo and back down. And it was the Scots that done that. Again,
like 60% of Belfast is like drained, reclaimed land. That's why. So we have no tube or no like underground system in Belfast because we're built on a river. And then the outskirts, if you're driving into Belfast, you'll see, do you know the balls on the falls, the rise? So that piece of art, West Belfast climbing frame, it's about the sun coming up over the marshland. So as I say, all that 100 odd years ago was, as I say, it was underwater. All the wee avenues, if you go up into like Joy's Entry and different bits around Belfast, High Street used to be canals. So like the bars and stuff would get their stock delivered by push boat. So as I say, so what we know is Belfast now, but as I say, about 60% of it, if you took a map and went back 100, 150 years ago, you were underwater. So, which is better than 40 years ago when you were under rubble. But yeah. So is it in terms of the smoke content and the element?
The small content.
Yeah, the smoke content. But yeah, I know it's for our stuff as well. It's about the because we're still in the new infancy of smoky Irish whiskey. It's about the mixture of that intense flavour profile, but with the added benefit of triple distillation coming into play. So I'll always say like anything from Islay is trying to kick you in the throat, whereas we are trying to tickle you under the chin. So it's a softer pull. It's that the sweetie, fruity element coming into it. So yeah, as I say, we're not barbecue whiskey as well. That's the one I've been saying about the peated whiskey. So barbecue whiskey. Barbecue whiskey has been, from Whiskey Live, has been like my phrase for our peated whiskey. There's this whole like unwritten idea of peated whiskey of being like, oh, it's in the winter and you have your big thick iron jumper on and the fire's lit and it's raining outside. And it was like, yes, that's absolutely gorgeous. I could spend months like that. But this particular style of peated whiskey, this is barbecue whiskey at like 8, 9 o'clock.
Barefoot.
Do you know what I mean? Sitting out in the grass, you're just chilling out, sun's going down. Like it's to me, it's like it's summertime smoke. So it's that. It's shifting the perception of what peated whiskey can be, because everybody has it as this dank, rainy, cold atmosphere, whereas this is, yes, it's a later in the evening dram, but it's definitely it's a bright evening. As it can be drank in the heat, it can be drank in shorts and a t-shirt. So it's not your typical peated whiskey. So it's about us kind of redefining the parameters of what smoky whiskey can be, of what Irish whiskey can be.
Is there anyone in the room that doesn't like peated? What was the opinions on the two peated drams?
I would kind of, like I said, barbecue, for having spent the last kind of months to 6 weeks barbecuing every night and throwing like stuff like nectarines, peaches, stuff like that, pineapple on the barbecue at the end with the ice cream. That's what that was, the peated thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be a fan of peated at all, but I probably would drink that.
Yeah.
and happily drink it. Whereas the 3-year-old Madeira, the other peated, I even putting water into it, I thought, okay, it did open up the profile more. You got kind of more bananas, burnt sugars, that kind of stuff, more like a rum for me anyway.
Yeah.
I would take that guy, the peated single malt.
The 43%, the actual core release. But what about yourself?
I'd be a little bit more simpler on my things. Number 6, I wouldn't hand back.
Yeah. That's,
We wouldn't take it off.
Same answer. That's
But I do have a question for you on something you mentioned earlier on. Crop rotation, do you have a rye whiskey in production or in
not in production. Sorry, question asking, do we have rye whiskey in production? Not yet. We will do. And we're very fortunate to get a nice modern distillery. It's sad saying we don't have a 200-year heritage, but we have this beautiful distillery that's capable of handling pretty much all grain types. We have a double vessel brew house, which means we can manipulate. We don't need to use enzymes. We won't and don't and never have used enzymes in any of our production. Pot still or not. Again, if we have less yield, so be it. That's what we're all about. Again, so we don't have a rye whiskey in production yet, but we will. Again, it's not something that we just want to produce simply to say we've produced a rye whiskey. When the farmers are ready and they're going through that process of changing, absolutely, we will do it then.
And don't send us to Scotland as well.
No. We might peat it ourselves.
Now, there are many ways you can spend 2 hours, but I think that was among the better ways. Can we all agree? We're going to do a quick up, down, up, down, up the down. We're going to do a quick little vote. The folks online, I know there's 15 of you online right now, and the folks who are watching this on the weekend, because who wants to drink whiskey on a work night, you can just yell at the screen. Let us know in the chat. What's your favorite whiskey? If you want to do a full 1 to 6, let us know. If you want to just what your favorite whiskey was of the whiskeys, even 1 to 4, 1 to 2, 1 to 3, whatever you want to do, let us know in the chat. In the room, the Swiss Army knife, the general, the whiskey who could just sit any situation. Whose was that? Whose favorite was that?
The first one.
The first whiskey. Yes. Oh. Okay. Sorry. First off, who liked it?
Oh, wow.
Great.
It's like, guess who?
Whose was it your favorite? No. Okay. On to the 13-year-old Oloroso, the spicy, the sweet, the fruity. The 15-year-old Oloroso, the spicy, the sweet, the fruity.
Number 1.
We have a number 1.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
We got
We have a trendsetter. It was 1 vote and now it's 5, 6, 7, 8.
online.
And 1 online. 9. We've 9 people in the room.
Amazing value.
Amazing value. The first whiskey, the peated, that is a component of whiskey number 6. The 3-year-old Madeira at 61.6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the man who's not allowed to vote, 6.
Counts that spike 5 times.
Yes. Whiskey number 4, the 19-year-old, 21-year-old. I didn't even get to finish it. From Shushmills whiskey. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And 2 votes online.
And 2 votes online. That's about the same as the 15-year-old. Okay. We like sherry here. The Hinch single malt. Now, again, we'll go back to the Swiss Army knife. Who liked it?
Yeah, it was very good.
But it wasn't your favorite. Okay. Well, let it have a few more years. There's an 8-year-old I hear coming. And lastly, a Hinch peated single malt with all those extra casks in it.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on. You wouldn't throw it out of bed. I know you voted before. You can't vote again.
She has 2 hands.
It's 2 hands. 2 hands, 2 whiskies. Yes. And now, for the folks, we have 4 for that. Excellent. For the folks online, Alex has or will be putting out a link to the WhatsApp group in a few minutes, if he hasn't already. He already put it. Scroll back in the chat, you'll be able to find the link to the WhatsApp group. There will be a discount code coming. Anyone who's not here tonight, you're not watching this video, so why am I talking to you? But there will be an email with a link to the WhatsApp group, which you'll be able to check out later on.
And the discount code.
And the discount code. And the folks here in the room, there'll be whiskey for sale down the back of the room afterwards. But first off, before we do anything like that, can we get a round of applause? And before we go anything else, hands up, single malt. Oh no, you've got more. That man just there in the brown shirt. Hands up, Peated.
I think it was himself.
Yeah, it was this man here who didn't like it.
Yeah.
So,
No, he did like the Peated. He did.
like this.
So that's the case.
There we go. For you, and the guy in the brown shirt. Thanks very much, folks. See you next month.
Thank you.